Hello. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to launch ourselves into the Cold War. Um, I have to let you guys know. Obviously, I've told you that a lot of topics are some of my favorites. Obviously, because I'm your history teacher, so I have to like some of this stuff. But I really do find the Cold War fascinating. So I hope that I break it down into easy to learn concepts. But as usual, please ask me if you have any questions on Zoom. If anything I went over too quickly, I will give you like supplemental assignments here and there that cover some of the same topics, but this is kind of a major overview of the Cold War. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The first thing you should notice is the dates, are the dates. 1947 to 1991 is the quote unquote official dates of the Cold War. You should notice that that's a very long time. This is not a normal war that we are discussing. And for those of us that remember world history, the Cold War is the larger umbrella that a bunch of little wars, I shouldn't call them little, but a bunch of other wars are going to be underneath the Cold War. So as we jump into it, know that we're going to be in the Cold War for basically the rest of this class. But we're going to touch on some major themes of the Cold War today. So, major Cold War theme. This is the main idea. This is what the Cold War is. If I could sum it up in one sentence, yes, a one sentence summary, here is the Cold War. Both superpower countries are emerging out of World War II, and they're fighting for global power and influence in their self-interests. So the two superpowers that we have are the United States and the Soviet Union. Obviously, the Cold War takes place right after World War II. They are like right next to each other. And they are both the superpower countries. They're both powerful. They both emerge as victorious, as strong. Obviously, Great Britain and France are strong as well. But France got taken over by Germany, if you remember, and Britain was fighting a while in World War II. And so they wouldn't call themselves maybe strong after World War II. But the two that are strong superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. And the Cold War is just a battle for global power, not through domination, well, kind of through domination, global power and influence and their self-interests. So what are their self-interests? What are they trying to expand around the world? Okay, the United States should be the easy side. A lot of this is emerging in the Potsdam Conference. Do you remember that conference? It was at the end of World War II. There was the Yalta Conference, and then there was the Potsdam Conference. Some of these ideas are emerging even then, and of course, they're going to stay throughout the Cold War. So, the United States is obviously a democratic republic. We are a democracy. We let the people vote in our country, and the people elect leaders who represent them. So, democracy. It may not be perfect, but that's our political system that we believe in. The economic system that we believe in is capitalism. Now, these two go hand in hand because capitalism is where the people kind of control the economy. People can create businesses, people can create products, people can then buy those products and choose, and businesses fail and businesses thrive. And capitalism is kind of in control by the people. The government does not control a capitalist economy. And then when we're talking about other countries, because we are a superpower country and we have influence, we believe that countries should have self determination, which means other countries should decide for themselves what kind of country they want to be. Now, I should have put a little asterisk next to that one because we do believe in self determination, but we also like to influence countries to be like us. So we're not completely pure self determination. If a country honestly, without pressure, if a country decided on their own to be communist, we wouldn't like that. And so, even though they self determined that, we would think that they were being pressured by someone else. And so, we would then want to pressure them to be like us. But yeah, self determination. The Soviet Union is the other superpower. Let's make sure we understand where they're coming from. They believe in a totalitarian government. You remember that means the word total. They believe in a leader that should have complete control, or a group or a party. It could be a person or it can be a small group, but basically, that group has total control over the people. That government group, government person, dictator, can have complete control over the nation. The economic policy that they believe in is called communism. Communism, you should see the word common in there, or commune. That idea is that everyone's the same. Nothing is privately owned, like in capitalism. Everything is owned by the government. And so in communism, there is no rich, there is no poor, there's just the people. And then there's your government leader. So you have maybe the leaders in government, they're at the top, and then literally everyone else is just supposed to be the same. So, yeah, communism is basically the opposite of capitalism, and totalitarian is basically the opposite of democracy. So you can see how these two superpowers, as they fight for global domination and global power, you can't be both. You can't be a little bit of United States and a little bit of Soviet Union. You do have to choose sides, and that's obviously going to be the Cold War. Oh, and sorry, the Soviet Union believes that countries should be allowed to be influenced. So, AKA, the Soviet Union feels like if they take over a country and make it communist, that's just the way life is. And honestly, I mean, you guys remember imperialism? I mean, I'm not justifying the Soviet Union. I'm just saying that what they're doing in their mind, they think is fine. That they can go into another country and take it over and make it communist, and they think that should be allowed. Whereas the United States has a policy right now that they don't think that should be allowed. So, when a country becomes communist, that is one less country that supports our way of life. The Cold War is who's in control. That's the entire Cold War. Who has power? Who is number one? That's the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union are fighting for that number one spot. When a country rises up and says, I don't know what I want to be, and they choose communism, we take that as a personal affront, a personal threat, because they chose the Soviet Union over us, and we feel less powerful. Vice versa. When the Soviet Union sees all these countries that we're friends with, they're looking at that as, oh, my power is diminishing. I feel weaker. So the entire next, 40 something years is going to be it's going to seep into everything. It's going to seep into military, technology, wars, the economy. Who is stronger? Who is the best? Who is number one? Is it the Soviet Union or is it the United States? So that's the Cold War summed up. If you understand that, then you are already in a good spot to learn all the little facts about the Cold War, but you need to know the basics. You need to know what's happening, who's fighting, what do they believe in, and how they're complete opposites. One thing I will note, and I might repeat this later on in the lecture, communism is very attractive to countries that have a lower economic population. So poorer countries really like the idea of communism, because if they are poor and if they're suffering and someone says, hey, communism can help you, it brings everyone together. There is no rich, there is no poor, we're all the same. That sounds really nice to people that are peasants or slaves or poor people. And so you'll see communism does spread a lot in the Cold War, and it's either by force, either the Soviet Union takes it over, or a country does choose communism, or a government chooses communism, because they have convinced the people that this is the right path that they should go on. So you'll see communism does spread, but obviously so does democracy and capitalism. So we'll see how this unfolds. So after World War II, the Soviet Union actually already starts to immediately expand. And so I wanted to show you that. I have a couple maps that I'm going to show you. But here in red, this is the Soviet Union and all of these other They're going to be called satellite countries, all these countries that they have taken over and made communist. But one thing I wanted to make sure we knew is that there is a phrase that you need to know in your notes, and that is the Iron Curtain. So the Iron Curtain gets created in Europe, but please understand this is not a real Iron Curtain. Okay, they're not like hanging up curtain rods and making this Iron Curtain and putting it everywhere in Europe. No. Okay, this is a metaphor for the division that's happening in Europe. Immediately after World War II, we see the division so clearly. It's as if there's an Iron Curtain in Europe. Half of Europe, and obviously going into the Soviet Union, is communist, and the other half is either democratic or just not communist. Okay, so the Iron Curtain. Make sure you know that it's the metaphorical division. Is metaphorical a word? Whatever. It's a metaphor for the division happening in Europe. Don't confuse this with something that's going to happen later, which is called the Berlin Wall. That is an actual wall that gets placed in Berlin, in Germany. But the Iron Curtain is a metaphor for the division of communist and not communist happening in Europe. So let's talk about these satellite nations. These are nations that have been taken over by the Soviet Union, and these are all of those nations right here. So again, the Soviet Union is working already. Right after World War II, they take over all of these countries right here. They already had this portion. Do you remember that from Potsdam? They were given this portion of Germany. That was a bad mistake. But they've taken over the Czech Republic. They've taken over Poland, even though Stalin promised that he wasn't going to do that in Potsdam. Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, all this stuff. Like, it's just boom. In your notes, why did Stalin specifically want these nations to be communist? You can pause the video here and really think about it, but look at where these nations are placed. Why did he want these nations? Okay, hopefully you paused the video. Maybe you didn't. Okay. One of the ideas is that he needs a buffer. Do you guys remember when Hitler just walked into the Soviet Union and attacked the Soviet Union? At that time, Russia. Or sorry, at that time it was Soviet Union. My brain's fuzzy. That was not great. The Soviet Union does not have oceans along the sides like America does. We love our oceans. We feel like it's a buffer. It's maybe what's kept us from certain invasions and certain wars, because you literally have to go through an ocean. And so at this time, Soviet Union is thinking ahead. They're thinking strategically. I want all these nations in between me and my enemies, just in case there is some sort of war. So again, it's a buffer. It's a barrier. You have to get through all of these countries before you even get into the Soviet Union. The other thing is that these countries are all actually very weak, because these are the same countries that World War II was taking place in. And so it's not these countries' fault, but man, they've been taken over left and right. And Hitler was there and the Soviet Union was there. Some of them actually used to be a part of the Soviet Union. But after World War II, man, they've just been beaten up. And they don't have the military strength or the economic strength to fight back. And the Soviet Union knows that. Also, it's very beneficial if you take over other countries, because now you can convert those factories and convert those countries to support you. So that's exactly what they're going to do. All of these countries now are building weapons, building resources, all this kind of stuff for either the Soviet Union at large or for a potential war that may or may not happen. So very strategic why he wanted to take these satellite nations. So as we look at the world, this is the Cold War, and this is scary. There are colors. You should see red and blue. Those are very common colors during the Cold War. Red signifies communist, and blue signifies basically not communist. And gray is kind of just doing their own thing. Okay. Now, I know this is really simplified, but it is kind of what the Cold War is: communist versus not communist. I always make a joke that we support countries that we would have never supported during the Cold War, but our catchphrase is, at least they're not communist. So we do help out certain countries that are like crazy dictators or they're like killing their people, but at least they're not communist because in the Cold War, the worst thing you could support is a communist country. And the number one thing that we don't want to expand is communism. So it really is going to just be communist countries versus not communist countries. Because not every one of these countries is democratic, not every one of these countries is capitalist, but yeah, communist versus not communist. Anyways, the Soviet Union is giant. Gosh, the behemoth of a country. They all these satellite nations over here in Europe. You're going to learn about China and Korea and all these other areas right here that are going to become communist. But the idea here is how do we stop communism from spreading? That's what Truman is thinking about. He's our president during this time. That's what every government leader in America right now is thinking about. What is our foreign policy? How are we going to stop communism from spreading? What are we going to do about this problem? Well, we're going to put it in a container and seal it up and hope that it doesn't spill. Actually, this is real. If we were together in class, I would actually show you guys my leftovers and my lunch because I use Tupperware all the time. This is the Tupperware that I use. And yes, I picked red pasta because red equals communism. But the idea here is we want to contain communism. Every country that is already communist, we know that we can't make them uncommunist. We know that the Soviet Union has taken over those satellite nations, and you know what? We're not going to declare war on him and like make those countries not be communist anymore. We're just going to say every country that is communist, we just don't want it to spread anymore. So it's as if we're putting all these countries that are communist in a container. We're trying to close the lid super tight. And we're saying, okay, you guys can be communist. That's fine. But we don't want a little bit of marinara to spill out of this container. Nope. We don't want any other countries becoming communist. Communism stops here. Sounds like a pretty good idea if I do ask myself. Okay, so this is called containment. This is the official name. That's why I use the container example. Our foreign policy in the Cold War is called containment. We want to prevent any extension of communist rule to other countries. So I have 3 questions that I want you to write in your notes. Number 1, why do you think Truman decided to do this? He picked containment, preventing any extension of communist rule to other countries. He could have picked other responses. Why did he pick containment? Number 2, do you think we will get involved in foreign affairs if containment is our foreign policy? Yes or no? Containment is not addressing the people that are already communist. Containment is making sure that communism doesn't spread. So, are we going to be involved in foreign affairs? And number 3, what are the pros and cons to this policy? I know this is in the beginning of your notes, so you're going to know more about containment in about 30 minutes. But right now, with the definition of containment, what are the good and the bad that you can already sense, that you can already think about? The good and bad in containment. Okay, here we go. Containment is in action. Boom. Turkey and Greece. Look at the bottom right-hand screen. Boom. Right there, Turkey and Greece. I love Turkey. I love visiting there. Crazy government stuff happening right now, but the people of Turkey, oh, mwah, love them. Okay, Turkey and Greece are suffering economically. This is after World War II. Turkey and Greece are suffering. Ooh, danger, danger. Remember what I told you about communism? When a country is suffering economically, when their people are poor, they sometimes gravitate towards communism. They think that that will solve their problems. So Turkey and Greece are suffering economically. They are in danger of becoming communist. Truman, our president, wanted to step in and prevent that from happening, aka containment. We don't want any of the marinara to spill. So he issues something called the Truman Doctrine. It basically says he's going to help out any country who is in danger of becoming communist by giving them economic aid. This is the Truman Doctrine. This is a statement, official statement from our president saying this is how he's going to run his country and his foreign policy. He's going to help out any country who is in danger of becoming communist by giving them economic aid. It starts with Turkey and Greece. We let that money flow. This is Truman. He's like, hey, what's up? Here's some money, everybody. Watch out for the virus of communism. But here's some money and it'll make things better. Here's a tank. And you know what? It worked. Turkey and Greece, they received economic aid from America, from us, and they didn't become communists. Now they're an ally to us. Did we bribe them? Maybe. Okay, the next thing. We make it rain, people, Marshall Plan. Same thing. We actually just give a bunch of money to all these countries. Oh my gosh, what the heck? Millions of US dollars. We give money to the United Kingdom. We give money to France, Italy, West Germany, Netherlands, Greece, Austria, everything. Again, we're trying to help our allies stay afloat. We're trying to make sure that no one changes to communism. Oh, this is a fun story. This is called the Berlin Airlift. This is also containment. But something also happened. Do you guys remember after the Potsdam Conference that we separated Germany into 4 zones? We gave Great Britain a zone, boom. We gave France a zone, we gave America a zone, and then we gave the Soviet Union a zone. That was a mistake. These 3 are obviously not communist, but this big red one is communist. You know what the problem here is, though? The capital city of Berlin is in the Soviet Union zone. Oh my gosh, guys, come on. Why didn't you see that this was going to be a problem? So Berlin, the capital of Germany, is in the Soviet Union zone. So let's zoom in there. Boom. Did you go closer to your screen? Half of Berlin is communist and half of Berlin is not. So what do you think Stalin wants to do? He wants all of it, baby. He doesn't want this little bit of non-communist. He wants to make West Berlin communist. So this is what he tries to do. He blocks everything he can so that there's no one leaving and no one coming into West Berlin. He's basically going to starve the people. He's going to make the people fear until they just surrender and say, okay, we will be with you. But what do? We just fly over all the blockades and we just fly over all of his buildings and barriers, and we just drop food and supplies to our good friends in West Berlin. It was kind of the most demeaning acts, I feel like. Stalin was like, aha, I blocked all the roads. They cannot come in. And then boom, we just fly over them and save our people and keep them alive and tell them, hey, we have not forgotten about you. We are going to protect you and make sure that you do not fall to communism. And it doesn't. So somehow this little piece stays free, even though everything around it is communist. Okay, let's look one more time at a map because we love maps. Right here, Soviet Union and its satellite nations. All the green is our allies, and then the tan is kind of just people doing their own thing. But I want you to notice 2 important names that you should know: NATO and the Warsaw Pact. We actually initiate this and we create NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That's all of these countries in green. What up, Turkey and Greece? You're welcome. They are our friends, and we are basically making a defensive alliance. We are supporting one another, saying that we are on a team together, and we are supporting, defense supporting. We're not an offensive group. North Atlantic Treaty Organizations. Well, the Soviet Union says, well, if you do that, I'm going to make my group, and they are called the Warsaw Pact, and it's just officially solidifying the fact that the Soviet Union has these guys on their side. Do you see the Iron Curtain? I mean, you shouldn't really see it because it's not real, but you see the division between communist countries, non-communist countries. So make sure you get all this down. You can pause the video, but this is everything I just talked about, and all of this is containment. The Truman Doctrine, Marshall Plan, the Berlin Airlift, and the creation of NATO are all examples of containing communism. We are making sure that communism does not spread. We're not declaring war on countries that are communist. We are just making sure that communism does not spread. Okay, in your notes, checkpoint number 1. Do you support the policy of containment? Now that you've learned what containment is, now that you know a couple examples of how containment showed up, do you support the policy of containment? Why or why not? Be ready to share it in the Zoom session. Okay, you feel that heat? You feel that heat? Because the Cold War is heating up. By the way, the sweetest little angel last year thought that the Cold War was called the Cold War because it was cold in the Soviet Union. Oh, sweet angel. I had to tell him that, like seasons change and that it's not always cold in the Soviet Union. And I had to also tell this sweet angel that it was called the Cold War because some people think it's called the Cold War because we never fought the Soviet Union in the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union never fought us in America. That would have made it a hot war. That would have made it like World War III, So some people think it was just the icy tension between us and the Soviet Union that's why it was called the Cold War. But regardless, it's called the Cold War. But here are some examples of when the Cold War heats up. Because these are actual wars. What happens in China and what happens in Korea are actual, real wars between us and the Soviet Union, but we're not fighting in each other's countries. We're fighting in China and we're fighting in Korea. So here we go. You guys know our U.S. policy is, say it loud, containment. Yeah, I know. Well, this is the story of China becoming a communist country, so you can see how containment's going to work. Here we go. Let me get all the slides up. Okay. Part 1. China was not always communist. China was actually previously ruled by a nationalist person named Chiang Kai-shek, and the government wasn't great. Okay, it wasn't communist, but it wasn't great. It was actually very inefficient. It was very corrupt. But the United States still supported this government because you remember the catchphrase? At least they're not communist. Well, we have a leader rising up. Mao Zedong is a communist leader. This is him. And he took advantage of the situation that was happening in China. China, again, was not being ruled by someone who was great. He was not a nice person. He was very, corrupt is the best way to say it. And the peasants, the lower class of the Chinese people, they weren't being heard. They weren't being supported. They were starving at times. It was a very poor country for these peasants. And so they looked to new leadership, as often people do. And so the leader that they put their hope in was Mao. Mao Zedong told them, communism will solve your problems. We've heard this story before. Communism will uplift the peasant class, and that if he was their leader, he would change China for them. Well, it worked. So there was a civil war in China. We now have nationalists, the people that were part of the original Chinese government, and versus communists. The United States, okay, we are still practicing containment. So we see this happening, and so we send money to the nationalists. We send money, resources, weapons, not soldiers, to the Chinese effort for the nationalists. Now, in your notes, why would some Americans like this? And why would some Americans not like this decision? So again, we are practicing containment. If China becomes communist, then containment fails. So America needs to do something. Why did some people like that we sent money? Or why did you think some people were against the fact that we were sending money? No soldiers, but money. Well, the nationalists retreat. They go to this island of Taiwan, and the communists win. Here's China. Boom. Communists. Here's all the people that retreated. They went to the island of Taiwan right next to China. China becomes a communist country. How do you think Americans are going to react to this? Oh my gosh. What's going to go on in their heart? What are they going to feel? What are they going to think when they open the newspaper and they see China becomes a communist country? How do you think they're going to react? Well, number one, they're going to say, "What the heck? Containment has failed." And guess what? People on both sides of the political aisle are going to attack Truman and say that it's his fault. Republicans and Democrats attacked the Truman administration for only supplying limited aid to China. Their response, the government's response, is said, okay, China becoming communist was a failure of our work internally in the country. If we would have done more, meaning if we would have sent soldiers, it would have started a war in Asia, and we weren't ready for war. Okay, do you catch that response? It makes sense to me. Truman is saying, okay, we get it. Like, our people in country should have prevented this rebellion. But if we would have sent soldiers, it would have started another war. And I don't know if you guys remember, but we were just in World War II. We're not in a state that is strong enough to fight another war. I think it makes sense to me, but the American people were like, lame. There must be communist agents in the government. Yes, this is a common thought in the Cold War. They think that China became communist because there's communists in our government that let it happen. Do you hear the hysteria? Do you hear the fear? People think of some crazy ideas. I mean, I know you guys know that more than anybody, but they were calling Truman a communist. They were calling all these other people communists, saying that they let China become communist because we have secret communist agents in our government. Maybe we did, you know. Now, on to the next war, because China becoming communist is just not enough. The Cold War is heating up. It's getting hot. It's getting hot in here. So let's talk about the Korean War. After World War II, I don't know if you remember this, but Japan kind of conquered Korea. Do you guys remember? This is actually called Korea, not North Korea and South Korea, but it was called Korea, and Japan took over Korea. And something interesting happened. The Japanese troops that were above the 38th parallel, this is the 38th parallel, the Japanese troops above it surrendered to the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union is right up here in the north. The Japanese troops below it surrendered to America. So after World War II, we now have two Koreas. We have something called North Korea and South Korea. There's a line in between, 38th parallel. North Korea is communist because they surrendered to the Soviet Union, and South Korea is democratic because they surrendered to America. I'm sure no problems are going to happen with us dividing this country and half of it being communist and half of it not being communist. Oops, there's a war. North Korea invaded South Korea. The communist side invaded the not communist side. Fun fact, if you go to North Korea, which you can't, but if you do, my friend was able to make it in there, and he went to a museum, a history museum, and their history, I don't know why I'm whispering, but I feel like they can hear me. Their history museum just twisted so many facts that the rest of the world knows is wrong. And so in that history museum of all these artifacts of this Korean War, it just straight up says South Korea invaded them and blah, blah, blah. And it just puts all the blame on South Korea and not on North Korea. And so I just think it's crazy that you can go to a totalitarian country and they can just make up whatever history they want. And I know America does it too sometimes, but it just kind of freaked me out. Anyways, I'm going to stop whispering. So North Korea invaded South Korea. Facts. South Korea then called up the UN and said, hey, can you help me stop this North Korean invasion? And the United Nations said, yep, we got your back. We're going to vote for military action. And Truman ordered the American troops to go and help. This is called containment. So we see, again, North Korea invading South Korea, The United Nations steps in. We're saying, nope, we're not going to let this happen. Let's go and support. So this is the Korean War in 4 pictures. Picture number 1. In 1950, June 25, we see North Korea attack South Korea. Boom. They are invading with the purpose of reuniting and making it one united Korea. Obviously, North Korea, if they're the one invading, they want to unite it and make it a communist Korea. Oh my gosh, September 14th, South Korea is on the brink of defeat. Look at how much North Korea had expanded. They have pushed South Korea to the corner. We need help. We need support. Boom, ask no further. November 25th, MacArthur, our general, but of course with the United Nations supporting as well, we push this and flip the script. Now it looks like we're winning. Pause there. Do we want to defeat North Korea? Or do we just want to stop them attacking? Do we want to make this a united Korea that isn't communist? Anyways, we're still fighting. We go, we push. Oh my goodness, we are winning. And then, what's up? You kind of forgot something. China jumped in the fight. Because what did China just become? Communist. Yep, and who else is right there? Oh yeah, the Soviet Union. So as they saw that the United Nations and America was butting their head into this situation, of course, China and the Soviet Union jumped in as well. And this is actually where the war ends, at a stalemate, a ceasefire. No one won, no one lost. It actually started the same spot. It ended at the same spot that it started. So still today we have a communist North Korea and a not communist South Korea. But let's zoom in on this issue right here with China because something crazy happened right there. We had a battle between our general and our president. Our General MacArthur actually thought that right here when China jumped in, he said we should have declared war on China. He also says, hey, we got some nukes back there. Why don't we just use our nuclear weapons against these Chinese cities? The communist conspirators have elected to make their play for global conquest. MacArthur knows that the communist countries will not stop until they have global power and domination. So why don't we send them a message here when we have all this power and support? Why don't we use our nuclear weapons to send a message and say, nope, that's not going to happen today. Our president, Truman, says, actually, I do not think we should declare war on China. It could set off World War III, because if you declare war on China, then every other communist country, aka the Soviet Union, is going to get more involved. And now we have not just a Cold War, but we have a very hot war called World War III. Truman said this was the wrong war at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong enemy. Who do you agree with and why? MacArthur or Truman? MacArthur, being the general, was supposed to listen to the president's orders. Okay, the president is still the leader of the army, the commander-in-chief. So MacArthur is supposed to listen to Truman, but MacArthur actually tried to go over the president's head. He talked to newspapers and magazine publishers and to even the Republican leaders, and he criticized the president. Truman then fired MacArthur, and many Americans were outraged. Now, obviously, as time went on, people understood that maybe this was the right thing that Truman did, but in the aftermath, it was actually very tense and very chaotic. Okay, settling for a stalemate, no one won. So the ceasefire happened on June 23rd, 1951. The location of the battle line is called the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone, between both North Korea and South Korea. They exchanged prisoners. North Korea is still communist, but communism was contained. I mean, containment, right? We were supposed to not let communism spread, and it didn't. Korea is still 2 nations rather than 1. In your opinion, was this a success or failure? Was the Korean War a success or failure? Let me go back. Now, effect on America. The Korean War is sometimes called the Forgotten War, which I hate because obviously we have a bunch of veterans that gave their life, that gave their time, that gave their, emotional support. Like they gave a lot for our country. They had to contain communism and they did. But a lot of people just skip over this war. It was a real war and we did lose lives. And so if you see a veteran with their hat on that says Korean War, make sure you thank them because again, or if you, yeah, make sure you thank them because I mean they gave their service to our country, and a lot of people don't even know anything about the Korean War. So again, they know Vietnam, they know World War II, and they just think nothing happened in between when there was a very real war in between. It cost $67 billion for this war. Mm-hmm. And Truman was a Democrat. So this war, what happened to China and this war is kind of what made people kind of just reject the Democratic Party. And they want a new leader from a different side of the party. So they want a Republican, and they're gonna get Dwight D. Eisenhower, and you're gonna see how he's different than Truman. This war obviously also created increased fear of communist aggression. And this is crazy. We're going to talk about this more, but all of this global stuff happening against communism definitely affected life inside of America too. So now that they fear that communism is spreading around the world, they hunt for Americans who might be communists in our country. And guess what? It could be you. You could be communist and you don't even know it, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, checkpoint number 2. After learning about China and the Korean War, do you support the policy of containment? Why or why not? Okay, so we just added some more. We learned our European information on containment. Now we just learned about China and the Korean War. Do you still support containment? Okay, you're almost done. When the Soviets created their atomic bomb, Truman had to make the decision whether or not to develop an even more horrifying weapon called the H-bomb. So again, this is actually when Truman is still our president. Remember those nuclear weapons that MacArthur was referring to? Well, yeah, he was kind of talking about smaller nuclear weapons, but also this one right here. The hydrogen bomb is 67 times more powerful than the atomic bomb that hit Hiroshima. Do you need me to read that again? Because that is unreal. The atomic bomb that we used on Hiroshima decimated the whole city in a matter of seconds. So a bomb that is 67 times stronger than that is a really big bomb. Okay, here's our new president. Are you ready for him? Because he's Eisenhower, and you need to know his personality. Does that name sound familiar at all to you? Allied soldiers and airmen, today is the day that you... Just kidding, that's not his voice. Sorry, I should not have tried that. He was our main general in the European front in World War II. So he was the one leading D-Day. He was the one leading all of those. He is a military, master. He is awesome. So that's our president now. So I wonder how he's going to do during the Cold War. So Dwight D. Eisenhower is our president from 1953 to 1961. He's a Republican, and his vice president is named Richard Nixon. Sound familiar? His Secretary of State is John Foster Dulles, and he is a very strong anti-communist. Good job, Dulles. He pushed for the buildup of nuclear weapons. Sounds great. What is Eisenhower's take on containment? He's going to take it, obviously, with his military background, why he got elected, what do the American people want? It's something called brinkmanship. To go to the brink of something means to go to the edge. So what Eisenhower is basically going to do when he's president is he's going to basically say that he will go to war. He's not afraid to go to war, and he's not afraid to use weapons. And if a communist nation is being aggressive towards us or any of our allies, he is sending the message loud and clear that he will press the button. He will send the nuke. He will go to war because he thinks our country is prepared for that. He thinks our country can do that. And in order to quote unquote win the Cold War, he thinks that that's what we need to do. So the United States is actually going to cut down the funds in the Army and the Navy and going to expand the Air Force. Why? Because the Air Force are the ones that are delivering these nuclear weapons. So again, where is his emphasis? Emphasis is on nuclear weapons. Emphasis is on the Air Force. That is brinkmanship, and that's our new president during the Cold War. This is actually a pamphlet that would have been handed out to people because, we got nukes and we got a president that says, I will press the button and I will use them. In 1952, the US explodes its first hydrogen bomb. Remember the one that was 67 times bigger than the atomic bomb? Don't worry, it was a tester one. We just wanted to show the world what we got. But in 1953, 1 year later, the Soviet Union exploded theirs? What the heck? We're supposed to be number one on top. We don't want them to have a bomb too, but they do. So guess what? You need to protect yourself because apparently we have bombs, they have bombs. And even if the bomb didn't reach the target, millions of civilians would die. Even if, honestly, I know this is very morbid, but if an atomic bomb was coming at you, you kind of want to be just like in the blast, like in the target. But miles and miles away from the target, people could still die. People can still get radioactive fallout. That's what this pamphlet's talking about. Things could fall on you. Things can affect your breathing. Things could affect your skin. You can get a leg blown off. Like a lot of stuff can happen even if you're not in the direct center of the blast. Are you scared? Because I would be scared. Okay, I'm like high-key scared right now because of these bombs. And so fear of nuclear war, it will be constant in American life for the next 30 years. 30? Yes. There's a reason why you don't wake up and think of nuclear weapons today. And I'll tell you that reason later. But if you lived in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, you would have that fear. That maybe, just maybe, if it got heated, if we had a crazy leader in the Soviet Union, if we had a crazy president as our president, maybe, just maybe, we could die due to nuclear warfare. So these little pamphlets are being passed out saying, hey, if a bomb comes, here's how to protect yourself. Yes, believe it or not. So this is my favorite little thing. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to cry, but hopefully it does. I want you to watch this video. It's called Duck and Cover by Bert the Turtle. Dun, 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 dun. It's very cute. And it's going to tell you, if you lived in 1950s, it's going to tell you how to protect yourself from an atomic bomb. Yep, that little monkey is holding a fake little atomic bomb, and Bert the Turtle is going to tell you how to protect yourself. So make sure you answer these two questions after watching the Duck and Cover Bert the Turtle thing. Number 1, what is the method of protecting yourself? And number 2, why do you think the government chose to warn people of the atomic bomb this way? One of the things that became common in America, because again, the bomb could come at any time, is building a fallout shelter, building a bomb shelter. If you have the ability to build one underneath your home in your basement, they would show picture after picture of what should be in there, how long you should be prepared for. Again, this was common talk in the 1950s. This was something everyone accepted. DIY shelter, build your own shelter. Yeah, that's how normalized, I guess, the fear of communism became and the fear of nuclear warfare became. Okay, remember Eisenhower is our man. He's our president. So one of the things he's going to create is called the CIA. Ever heard of it? The Central Intelligence Agency. Under the Eisenhower administration, we use the newly formed CIA. The CIA uses spies to gather information around the world. Remember, we're in the Cold War. We want to be dominant. We want to be number one. We want to know what's happening in other countries because we don't want communism to spread, and we want to stay on top. This one you may or may not like. The CIA started secret operations to weaken or overthrow governments that were unfriendly to the United States. We get involved in the Middle East and we get involved in Latin America. Honestly, the common American would not know and still does not know what the CIA is doing all around the world in order to quote unquote keep us safe. So during the Cold War, the CIA is doing that same stuff. They are stopping rebellions. They are overthrowing crazy dictators. They are overthrowing certain governments without the American people even fully knowing that all of this is happening. So again, America is trying to claim its dominance and prevent aggressive communist nations or just aggression that is unfriendly to us. Do you remember the Truman Doctrine? Hopefully you do. Just talked about it like 45 minutes ago. The Eisenhower Doctrine is that the United States is going to defend the Middle East against any attack by any communist country. Why just the Middle East? Oil. Oh, sorry. Gotta get the oil out of my throat. But the United States would defend the Middle East against any attack by any communist country. Interesting. We're still doing containment. We're still preventing communism, but now we've made it an extra clear that we are defending the Middle East. Checkpoint number 3. Now that we have Eisenhower, do you support the policy of containment through brinkmanship? So he's still preventing communism from spreading, but now he's added brinkmanship to it. Do you support that? Why or why not? Something happened in Hungary that I'm curious your guys' thoughts on this. That's a picture of Stalin's head, okay? Hungary was a satellite nation, but wanted to become a democracy. Let me see if I put a map. Oh, I didn't put a map. Dang it. You remember satellite nations? They're those little countries right next to the Soviet Union that the Soviet Union took over. Hungary was a satellite nation, but wanted to become a democracy. The Soviet Union was incredibly violent, killed a bunch of people, overthrew the leader of Hungary, and took back control. And the United States did nothing. Why do you think the United States responded in that way? This is called the Hungarian Uprising. This was all over the news. This is during the Cold War. This is during the policy of containment. This is during brinkmanship. This country is begging to be a democracy. The people are crying out to the rest of the world. We don't want to be communist. We don't want to be with the Soviet Union. Help us. And we did nothing. Why? Okay, last topic. In 1955, Eisenhower traveled to Geneva, Switzerland to meet with the Soviet leaders. Switzerland's a nice neutral place to leave. I've also been to Geneva. That's where the United Nations is. It's pretty cool, very pretty. Eisenhower meets with the Soviet leaders and he says, hey guys, I have a great idea. It's called the Open Skies Proposal. His idea was that the United States and the Soviet Union would allow flights over each other's territory to guard against any surprise nuclear attacks. Because we all have hydrogen bombs and because everyone is scared that you can just wake up and then die the next day because of a bomb, Eisenhower said, well, why don't we let each other just fly over? And if we see somebody building up a bunch of weapons, we can be like, hey, yo, why are you doing that? And we can kind of keep check on one another. Well, the Soviet Union said, no, we don't like that plan. To be continued. The Soviet Union had a new leader named Nikita Khrushchev, and I love the name Nikita. I think it would be a really cute name for a cat, Nikita. But Nikita Khrushchev is way different than any other Soviet leader that you have heard before. He's going to be the leader between 1953 and 1964. He believed that communism would take over the world peacefully. So he is nothing like Stalin. He does not want to take over random countries. He doesn't want to kill a lot of people. He thinks communism is awesome. He thinks genuinely it would help the people if there's not this mega rich and mega poor. And so what's crazy is that the United States actually peacefully coexisted with the Soviet Union. We have Eisenhower here. We have Nikita Khrushchev right here. Things are looking good. Okay, maybe we can just, stay in our own lanes. You in the communist lane, me in the democratic lane. Maybe we can just do that. Oh, America. Something was happening. Do you remember that race I was talking about, the competition? We want to be number one. I told you that we wanted to be number one in everything. We wanted to be number one in military. We wanted to be number one in global domination. We also want to be number one in weapons. We also want to be number one in technology. So during this time, the space race starts. The Soviets actually launched something called Sputnik in 1957, which is the world's first artificial satellite. The Americans are shocked and inspired, and they actually make one themselves. So in 1958, the United States launches its first satellite. Satellites orbit around the world. They can zoom in, they can take pictures, they can watch stuff that's happening in different countries. So now the Soviet Union and America both have these satellites orbiting the world. Cool. Well, you remember the CIA? Well, you remember when Eisenhower asked if he could, fly over the Soviet Union and take pictures? You remember what the Soviet Union said? They said, no, you can't do that, but we're going to do it anyways. The CIA was making secret high altitude flights over the Soviet Union. This plane was called a U 2, not to be confused with the band U2, but this secret plane, the U 2, took pictures of troop movement and missile sites. Americans and Soviets both knew what was going on, and on May 1st, Francis Gary Powers was shot down by a Soviet plane and then sentenced him to 10 years in Soviet prison. At first, Eisenhower denied that the U 2 was spying. Goodness. The Soviets had evidence, so then Eisenhower admitted to the fact that we were spying. Khrushchev demanded an apology and a promise to halt flights, and Eisenhower promised to stop the flights, but no official apology. Khrushchev withdrew from the summit they were going to talk about peace negotiations and took away Eisenhower's invitation to the Soviet Union. Yay! So this U-2 incident rekindled the tension between the Soviet Union and the United States. So ladies and gentlemen, the last question in your notes. Which of the two superpowers do you think contributed more to the Cold War tensions in the 1950s? Don't just take the U-2 incident. That one is obviously a bad one for us. But look at all your notes. Which of the two superpowers do you think contributed more to the Cold War tensions, the Cold War problems in the 1950s? Was it America or the Soviet Union, and why? Believe it or not, the Cold War is not done, but this is a lot of notes, and I know it's a lot of notes. But hopefully it made sense. Hopefully we learned about containment and how we are starting with the Cold War. We have a lot to go, but hey, got to start somewhere. Okay, I'll talk to you guys in Zoom. Love you. Bye.